Thanks, John. Let's keep to the convention. Indicate your name, the publication you are representing, and your question. I'll start with you. I'll take all the names and then I'll come back to the sequence of the question. So I've noted you as the first one. Is there still any other hand here? Once the question slot is done, so I don't want to have a back and forth afterwards. Okay? You, Bonga, Claudie, and the last one. Let's go.
Okay, my name is Steenhuisen from the Citizen newspaper, to the new DA leader. You talk about redressing the legacy of apartheid. How exactly does the DA plan to redress the legacy of apartheid? And also, the DA seems to be getting more whiter and whiter every day. How do you plan to appeal to black voters? Why should black South Africans believe what you're saying?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just say this, that of course we've got to have targeted redress policies, and our point is that the redress policies must be targeted at those people who need it the most, and that's got to be the 99.9% of the people in South Africa that Stats SA have identified as poor in South Africa and happen to be black, and so those are where those redress policies have got to be. But redress policies can never be a substitute or an alternative to good opportunity policies. So there is no substitute for a good education, a good healthcare system, a economy that's growing, and policies that ensure that we are creating jobs. Those are the best and surest way to address inequality and lift more people out of poverty. And so we've got to focus on both the opportunity policies along with the redress policies. And we can't use redress policies in a manner that crowds out opportunity policies and undermines the work that they can be doing. Yes, I happen to be a white South African, but I want South Africans to judge me not on the color of my skin, but rather on the quality of contribution that I can make to improving the lives of South Africans. I've said it so many times before. You don't have to look a certain way or speak a certain way to speak out for injustice, against injustice, to speak out for people who are downtrodden. And we have a proud history of people in our party, Molly Blackburn, Helen Suzman, who didn't necessarily look like the people they were fighting for, but were out there every day on the front lines improving their lives. So I happen to be a white South African. I believe I've got a contribution to make, and I want people to judge me on that. I also happen to think that South Africa is in such a deep crisis. 10 million unemployed South Africans, an education system that's failing young people, very few opportunities for graduates who are leaving university, state-owned entities that are about to explode the balance sheet of South Africa, and widespread corruption that still exists. I think that South Africa is a patient and deep crisis, and I think South Africans are becoming less concerned about the colour of the doctor who's going to perform the life-saving operation that gets South Africa from where it is to where it needs to be. And that's the message we'll be taking to communities. I also think it's important to notice that the DA is actually the most diverse political party in the South African landscape. You can see it in our Federal Council, you can see it in the leadership of the DA, if you look at our Federal Executive, you can see it in the structures of the party. This is a party on the move, this is a party that takes diversity seriously, but I think South Africans are looking for solutions, which makes it even more important for the DA to set out its own stall and its own offer about what we are offering South Africans, and they must then make the judge on what they believe is a party that can offer them the best alternative to improve their lives.
Thanks, John. Behind the pure SABC? Yeah, you are covered. Okay, Claudie, and then we'll come to Bonga.
Hi,
Claudie.
My question's on literally just on in terms of practicalities. Ivan, you said that the policy conference will be in April last year. Can we just have clarity on when the Congress will be, when the policy conference will be? Because then I assume Congress would have to be late in April, which was initially the day it was mooted. And then given the fact that you have now interim leaders, when will the CEO be appointed, and will the DA be reappointing head of policy?
Bonga?
Bonga Dulani, I read this news. John, can I just get a margin how much you want by, just for clarity? And number two, we heard from a source that Helen's decision to appoint, or want to appoint when as head of policy with the President Council, can confirm that tonight. And thirdly, SA came out with results this week saying that white South Africans still earn 3 times more black South Africans. Now, race in this country is a factor, whether you want to perceived is not, and politics is perception. So how do you intend to try to win South African voters when the party has a widely or just a place unlikely to unlikely race? Because at the same time, and also Helen Zille is sitting right next to you. She had a controversy of saying things that are against the party. She was taken to disciplinary hearing for that. So how do you maintain that perception of saying we're a party for all, but you still have such contradicting leadership next to you?
Thanks, Boa. From Zana.
From the CPC. My questions are somehow related to my other colleagues. You politicians, you know that perception in politics matter a lot. It may not be fact, but they matter a lot. The fact that there is a perception out there that the DA is going back to its original owners. And then you see, with these past two elections having produced, of course, today there is a black person, but by and large, the perception out there is that it's gone definitely white, it's gone back to its owners, so maybe black people may have nothing to do with that. So how are you intending, John, and perhaps you even, to deal with this perception that the party is gone?
Okay. Lisa.
Lisa, John, I just wanted to ask something unrelated to the election at Johannesburg. Was there any discussion around Johannesburg in the Federal Executive meeting, and what candidates will you put out, and also your discussions with your coalition partners, because IFP has been moved by the ANC. How is it going with your coalition partners as well as the EFF?
Cool. And Samgelo to wrap up the questions list.
Samgelo Masada from UNCA. John, I'd just like to get clarity. Why would you compare the issue of a sick patient and saying that color doesn't matter with the doctor that you would be receiving treatment from? Color in this country really matters, and it's an issue that needs to be deliberated upon. It comes across as if you share the same views of colonial tweets by your Federal Council chairperson, Helen Zille, and discreetly just espousing what you're saying. And then secondly, is the DA, politics is about perception, as the colleagues have said. Are you going back to being a lily white party that serves the interest of the right wing? And thirdly, you were once an ally of Mr. Maimana. Do you feel as if you backstabbed him by gunning for this position of interim leader, by not being forthright with him? And was he waffy when it comes to issues of policies, as you were saying, in the Democratic Alliance, saying that era is now over? Thank you.
Thanks. Can we have the responses?
Sure. Do you want to start?
I think what's going to happen now, because there was a question of practicalities, we are now reconvening the AGMs of the various structures in the party, particularly our branches, as we go to the constituencies, as we go to the regions, and eventually then the provinces. But what is now more critical, important, is to have the policy conference, and in terms of our timeline, it's going to happen in April this year, next year. You refer to last year, but next year in April 2020, and in May 2020, the Federal Executive has approved the timeline to have a Federal Congress to elect our permanent leaders at May 2020.
Thank you very much. No, I don't know how much I've won by. I'm hoping it was a significant margin, so that I've got a mandate to be able to move forward. In terms of the appointment of the head of policy, that is a process that's still ongoing. Our federal executive will be convening later this week, but that's not my lane, that's Helen's lane, so she'll be leading the discussion on that particular matter within the federal executive. I just want to talk about those Stats SA figures that released this week, because I think a lot of people have mistakenly taken them as supporting the view that race-based policies must be amplified. I think they're the prime example to me that race-based policies have failed. Inequality has got wider. Poor people, there are more poor people now in South Africa than before, after 2.5 decades of race-based politics. And let me be very clear. I've never once said that race doesn't matter. And I encourage anybody to go back and look at any interview I've ever done. I've never said that race does not matter. Of course it matters in South Africa. And it matters because 99.9% of poor people in this country happen to be black South Africans. So of course race matters. But you're not going to fix the problems that 2.5 decades of race-based policies have wrought on South Africa and address the inequality that is widening and the poverty that is growing and the opportunity that is narrowing by just continuing with the same processes. And I think that there's been an admission from even people like Minister Patel and the President that these policies have not worked and we need to go back to the drawing board. I want our party to be the party that's leading the debate on how we actually get to grips with dealing with poverty in South Africa. People living at home without opportunity, without a job, with no hope for the future, are looking desperately to political parties, to some way of lifting them out of the situation and putting them onto a ladder of opportunity that's going to mean they can actually change their lives and live lives of value in this country. The Stats SA figures show that far too many of them have been left behind and that we need to do far more work as politicians and as government to be able to lift people out of poverty. I happen to think they make the argument for why we need to relook at it. Of course perceptions matter, but I would ask who the original owners of the DA are. The DA is owned by its membership, the DA is owned by its structures, and the DA is owned by the elected leadership of the party. And I think if you look at the federal executive of this particular party, which is the apex leadership structure outside of the Federal Council, I think that it is the most diverse leadership of any other political party in this country. If you look at parties to the left and right of us, frankly, they're monochromatic. But there is the DA in its diversity, bringing the best talents of all South Africans together around the table to make a difference. And I think that outside of the vocal world of and vocal minority of Twitter and Facebook, that the majority of South Africans, and all researchers showed that, want to work together. They believe that by standing together, regardless of race or culture, that South Africa can be a better place. I'm yet to see a single piece of polling or research work that's been done that says that the majority of South Africans believe that we're better retreating into racial lagers and retreating into cultural encampments. That's not the case. The rational majority of South Africans want to work together. They believe that we are stronger together, that we are better together, and they want us all to be judged on what we're able to bring to the table. So, yes, there is going to be a difficulty, I have no doubt, and it's not an easy task. Because it's very easy to be a racial nationalist in this country because you just simply find a group of people who don't look like you, don't talk like you, don't sound like you, don't worship like you, and then you drive a message of hate, division, and despair amongst them, and you can mobilize. Our job is much harder as a liberal democratic party because we believe that the individual trumps the group every time and that we need to make sure that individuals are able to live a life of value. And yes, the case is a lot harder to make than the crude slavishness of race-based nationalism, but that is a challenge that we have. It's a challenge that the party's had since its foundational days as the Progressive Party, when we were called communists and called subversives, and DP and PFP and Progressive Party members of this party were harassed and imprisoned and harassed. So the case is as hard as it is now in post-democratic society, but it's a case we've got to make, and I believe it's one that we can win. In terms of Johannesburg, well, I've been in the job 25 minutes, but I will keep you posted on that. But I do believe that coalition governments are the future in South Africa. I think that it's going to be harder for any party in the country to win an outright majority, particularly as we go into local government elections. Of course, we would love to win an outright majority in every municipality in the country, but the reality and the real politics is different. So we've got to look at coalition governments, but those coalition governments must be grounded in values. There's no use going into coalitions where you end up actually destroying your brand as a political party and ending up with nothing at the end. The Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives coalition nearly wiped the Liberal Democrats off the face of the earth. You need to make sure that you're clear and unambiguous about what you want to achieve in those coalitions and how we can do it. So we will be talking to parties like the IFP and others across the political spectrum, including the coalitions that we're currently in, and doing a full assessment on them. The Federal Council adopted the review process panel report, which said very clearly we'd be doing some research within those within those cities to look at what people's perceptions are, how we can communicate better. But I want to make it very clear that the primary focus of DA governments are going to be to lift people out of poverty. Their one question has to be every day, what have we done today to improve the lives of the people who we govern? And that's very important. So Mkelo, yeah, I think that... See, now my writing was so bad. Okay, so I've dealt with the thing about perception. I don't think we're a lily-white party. Oh, yes.
Salaries between blacks and whites.
Yeah, of course, but that speaks to the point about Stats SA, that they show that inequality is widening, it's not narrowing, and that race-based policies of the last 2.5 decades have actually exacerbated the situation. They haven't made it better. We need a new idea about how we're going to ensure that we focus redress policies at the coalface so that we can lift people out of poverty. It's no use continuously re-empowering people who have been lifted out of poverty and are now fabulously wealthy time and time again. We've got to target the redress where it's needed, and that's the 99.9% of black South Africans, according to Stats, who are living in poverty in our communities, and that's where the targeted redress must be. The issue around the CEO, there is a part of the panel review process was that there'd be a look at the structuring of the party, and that process is undergoing. It's been headed by Thomas Walters and Natasha Mazzoni, who are busy looking at the structure of the party to see whether the structure that we've had is actually the best structure for us to be able to take the fight out into communities and to build that organic rooting into communities. And once that's decided, then the form will follow the function. We need to decide what the function is first. In terms of backstabbing Mr. Maimane, I'd want to be very, very clear here. I've never backstabbed Mr. Maimane. I served as his chief whip. I served him loyally, and I served him well, right up until the end. It was not possible for me to tell him that I was standing for the interim leader, because he'd resigned as the leader and resigned as a member of the party prior to this position even becoming available. So it wouldn't be, I didn't need to seek permission from anybody to do that. I wish Mr. Maimane well. If media or people are expecting me to sit here and slag him off, I'm not going to do that. He has had a role to play in the party. He's done some great things in the party. And yes, the review shows there's some areas that we didn't do so well under his leadership, and we need to address those going forward. But he goes with my best wishes, and I wish him well for the future. I'm certainly not going to get into a situation where I speak ill of somebody I served and somebody who was a friend and a colleague.
I think people are asking, where are we going as a party? We're certainly not going back. We're going forward, but with clear, solid principles. The Democratic Alliance believe, firstly, in constitutionalism. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in private property rights. We believe in non-racialism, and we believe in individual freedom. This is not going back. In fact, this is the only party that can save South Africa. Stick to the rule of law, because it is only constitutionalism and the rule of law, individual freedom and property rights that can really save South Africa and take us forward. And I want to make it absolutely categorically clear that there is no going back. This is back to the future, and that is the trajectory, and that's the leadership of John Steenhuisen, and I'm excited to see him taking these agenda items forward in the National Assembly, because there are urgent matters that this nation needs to address. Issues like expropriation without compensation, issues like the national health insurance, issues like the fiscal debt, issues like structural reform of our economy. This country is in a deep crisis, and the Democratic Alliance is the only party that can bring a capable state, the rule of law, accountability, and promote active citizenship. That is the choice, and that is why we are happy here in terms of the Federal Council resolution that we take South Africa forward. We've also resolved that we must improve the lives of the millions of South Africans, because the past policies of the current ruling party has put people backwards. We are here to bring hope, real hope, by offering the politics of pragmatism and change the lives of people in South Africa.
Thanks, Abin. Thanks, John. Thanks, Helen. Colleagues, on that note, can I?
Which one?
Which question was that?
We're in a situation. Was there a resolution today that was voted by council not to appoint as head of party?
The Federal Council has got no say over staff appointments. It's never been discussed. There was a discussion, but the process is still underway and it's unfolding. And as I said, the Federal Executive will be grappling with it at the next. Is it?
Cool.
Friday.
Yeah. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much. Happy Sunday. Let's go support Bafana Bafana.
No problem.